Madam, unmute your mic, please.
Good afternoon, sir. Hello.
Madam, nothing is audible. Please on you see your mic. Madam, click the unmute button on the screen. Mute button press ହେଇଯାଇଛି ଟିକେ unmute button press କରନ୍ତୁ screen रे ହଁ ଠିକ ଅଛି
आरंभ करबा
Yeah.
now it is okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am, it's okay.
Okay, so today's our topic is democracy. Okay, democracy has a Greek origin, as the first democratic government is believed to have originated in Athens in 5th century BC. The word democracy is derived from the Greek word demokratia. It is a combination of two Greek words, demos and kratos. Demos means peoples and kratos means power. So democracy means it stands for power of the people, that is ruled by the people, which gives true legitimacy to the government, as it is based on the consent of the ruled. It is generally agreed that democracy means popular rule and sovereignty. But now that will be achieved various forms, one country to other. It is a democracy, according to Abraham Lincoln. He said that democracy is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So the supreme power, yes. So the supreme power vested upon the people. The peoples have the sovereign power. That is why we today see different forms of democracy, like totalitarian democracy in North Korea, Islamic democracy in Pakistan and Turkey, presidential democracy in US, to a parliamentary democracy in India. There is an inherent tensions between liberty and equality, which democracy grapple with. Promoting individual liberty could have negative impact on equality and vice versa. Another issue that democracy are vulnerable to the danger of being reduced to the rule of majority at the cost of minority. Democracy is government of the majority. The majority, after getting majority votes, the government will be formed. This can be checked to a large extent if there is a high degree of and maturity and education among the voters in a democracy. This should be complemented by a genuine free press which would keep the public opinion balanced and free from any bias. A well-informed electorate and free mass media ensures government's accountability, which is the true spirit of a democratic system. There are a number of regions where democracy is seen as a better form of government compared to other. J.S. Mill, in his book Consideration on Representative Government, J.S. Mill, Consideration on Representative Government, J.S. Mill has given 3 advantages of democracy. First, democracy compels the decision makers. Democracy compels the decision makers to take into account public interest and opinion, which would not be the case in an authoritarian or aristocratic form of the government. Here, public opinion is given much more importance in a democratic form of government because the common peoples are sovereign. Second, democracy brings in multiple views in the process of decision making, which allows decision makers to pick up best ideas. Third, democracy also helps in character building of citizens as it inculcates qualities like rationality, autonomy, and independent thinking. This creates pressure on public opinion on the political leaders who cannot ignore people's view if they wish to remain in power. Nobel laureate Amartya Sen has given the leadership between democracy and famines, arguing that there has been no fairness in the functioning of a democracy as the leaders are accountable to the people and cannot ignore their basic welfare. But modern democracy came up in Britain and France and later spread to the other countries. A number of regions contributed to the spread of the democracy, that is corruption and incompetence, misuse of the power, absence of the accountability, and unjustifiable rules of the monarchs based on the concept of the divine rights. In a broader sense, democracy is not only a form of government, a state, but also a condition of society. A democratic society is one. A democratic society is one in which there is a socio-economic equality. In a democratic society, there is always socio-economic equality, while a democratic state is one where citizens get a chance to participate in an open and fair political process. Some frequent meanings attributed to the terms of the democracy, and they are as follows. First, rule by the poor and disadvantaged sections of the society. Second, society based on equal opportunity and individual merit instead of hierarchy and privileges. Welfare and redistribution to reduce social inequality. Decision making based on majority rule. Then protection of minority rights by placing check on majority rule. Fulfilling public offices through competition for public vote. All these are features of a democratic form of government. A number of features can be attributed to a democracy. There are a number of features of a democratic form of government. Written constitution. The democratic form of government should have a written constitution. Rule of law, rules of law, human rights, independent media, and judiciary. Separation of powers between executive, judiciary, and legislature could be described as some of the basic features of democracy. The idea of democracy has come a long way from its initial form in Greeks, which was not inclusive in nature. The Greek model of democracy excluded women, slaves, immigrants, making it a undemocratic in spirit. This spirit continued even in modern democracy like France, Britain, and US, where some sections were not allowed to vote, while voting rights were given to wealthy men. The France revolutions of the 1789 talked about liberty, equality, and fraternity apart from popular sovereignty for mankind. However, the women did not get the right to vote, and it was only in 1944. It was only in the 1944 that France started universal adult suffrage. In Britain, women got the right to vote in 1928, while in US, they got these rights only in the year 1920. However, a discrimination on the basis of the color remained in US, and it was only in 1965 that African American women males were given the right to vote. India has been progressive in this regard compared to the Western democratics, as India adopted universal adult franchise in the year 1950s when its constitution came into force and in fact become the world's first democratic state to have universal adult franchise since its inception. But in Saudi Arabia is the latest country which has followed women to vote in 2015. Women for the first time exercised their right to vote in municipal election. So all these are features of a democracy. Now, classification of democracy. Broadly, we have two types of the democracy: direct form of democracy and second is indirect form of the democracy. Democracy can be classified as direct and representative depending on how people rule. Direct democracy is based on direct and unmediated citizens' participation in government rule. In the direct democracy, people are participate directly. The people participate directly, but in indirect or representative democracy, people choose their representative. They make the rules and the regulations for the people. The representative forms the rules and the regulations of the people. The representative represents in the parliament on behalf of the people. All adult citizens take part in decision making to ensure that all the viewpoints are discussed and best possible decisions are taken. So direct democracy weeds out the distinction between the government and the governed, the state and civil society. The ancient Greek city-state model was an example of direct democracy. In contemporary times, direct democracy can be found in Swiss cantons in Switzerland. Direct democracy ensures greater legitimacy as people are more likely to follow decisions which are taken by them only. It also creates a highly informed citizenry which participates in decision-making process. In indirect, but in the larger size of the country, practicing direct form of the democracy is very much difficult in nowadays. That's why indirect democracy is prevailing in the day-to-day life. This issue was solved with the development of the representative democracy, which first appeared in Northern Europe in the 18th century. Representative democracy is limited and indirect form of democracy. It is limited because popular participation in policy making is very less, pertaining to voting in a few years, while it is indirect as people do not exercise power directly but through their elected representative. Presidential and parliamentary democracy are two main types of the representative democracy around the world. In presidential form of the government or presidential democracy, the president is the real head. But in a parliamentary form of the democracy, the prime minister along with the councils of the minister are real head. There are more parliamentary democracy around the world than presidential democracy. Parliamentary democracy are more representative than the presidential, but at the same time they are relatively less stable. Okay. Then page number 80. procedural and substantive dimensions of democracy. Procedural versus substantive dimensions of democracy. Democracy could be well understood by two different views: procedural minimalist and substantive maximalist. The procedural dimensions merely focus on procedure or means in place to attain democracy. It argues that regular competitive election on the basis of universal adult franchise and plural political participation would produce a democratically elected government. In his book 1942, Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy, Joseph Schumpeter has said that democracy is institutional arrangement for arriving at political decision. Democracy is an institutional arrangement for arriving a political decision. In which individual acquire the power to decide by means of a competitive struggle for the people's vote. Huntington has also echoed similar view, saying the central procedure of the democracy is the selection of the leaders through competitive elections by the people they govern. However, people are repressive as passive beyond electoral participation in the minimalist view, and thus are governed by the representatives. This view does not focus on liberty and freedom, as it emphasizes on how to elect a democratic government. In the absence of check and balance in the system, the elected leaders could manipulate procedures and power for their own benefit, leading to concepts authoritarianism. The government could work for the elites who hold power instead of the people, who should hold the ultimate authority in a democratic setup. Okay, all are the procedural democracy, then substantive democracy. Substantive democracy tries to overcome the shortcomings of the procedural democracy, arguing that social and economic differences could hamper people's participation in democratic process. Social and economic differences or inequalities could hamper people's participation in a democratic process. It focuses on outcomes like social equality instead of ends in order to truly work for the governed. In a sense, it talks about common good. Rather than the benefit of limited individual. The rights of marginalized sections like women and poor are protected through redistributive justice, so that condition can be created through state interventions in their participation in the political process. Various political scientists like John Locke, Rousseau, Immanuel Kant, J.S. Mill have contributed to the emergence of this view. Unlike some Peters, who believe that a conception of the democracy which aims for ambitious forms of equality is dangerous, Rousseau argued that formal variety of democracy is equivalent to slavery, and it is only egalitarian democracy which have political legitimacy. Okay, now types of democracy, page number 81. Now types of democracy, page number 81. First, classical democracy. Classical democracy is based on the polis or the city-state of ancient Greeks, with a particular system of rule that developed in the largest and most powerful Greek city-state based on mass meeting. The remarkable feature of this model was that the citizens were politically very active in classical democracy. Active citizens are found in the classical democracy. Apart from participating in assembly meetings, citizens also contributed to decision making and public offices. However, it excluded women, slaves, and foreigners from citizenship. It is pertinent to mention that it was only because of the slaves and women that the male Athenian citizens could get free time to devote to political affairs. Hence, their exclusion from citizenship was unfortunate and undemocratic. Plato, in his book The Republic, criticized Athenian democracy, saying that people were incapable to rule themselves wisely and they require rule by philosopher kings and guardians classes who were suited to rule. Then next form of the democracy, next type of the democracy is elistic democracy. Here in the elistic democracy, in the society there are two types of the peoples are living. This theory was propounded by Wolfgang Pareto, G. Mosca, Robert Michaels, and Joseph Schumpeter. This theory was developed in sociology but has major implications for political science as well. Michaels gave his iron law of oligarchy, arguing that despite its original aim, every organization is ultimately reduced to oligarchy, amounting to rule of few. Mosca said that people can be categorized as rulers and ruled. Most of the power, prestige, and wealth are in the hands of the ruling class, irrespective of the forms of government. The ruled follow the elite as they do not have leadership qualities. In this theory poses serious questions for democracy and suggests that in practice, democracy is not achievable as the elite would control the power, wealth, and hence the decision-making process. The next type of the democracy is pluralistic democracy. Contrary to the elistic theory, pluralistic believe that policy making is a democratized process. Policy making is a democratic process where different groups begin for their views to be accepted. It is result of interaction between different groups, unlike few elites. It is the interactions between different groups. Okay. Public policy is formulated by more organized and vocal groups. The main proponent of this theory include Carl Menehalem, Raymond Aron, Robert Dahl, Charles Lindblom. Dahl and Lindblom gave the concept of the polyarchy, meaning rule by many instead of rule by all citizens. They concluded that although all politically privileged and economically powerful extend more influence than ordinary citizens, no elite was permanently able to dominate the political process. That's why a group is necessary. Then next type of democracy is participatory democracy. All the democracies are participatory. The people's participation is necessary in a democratic form of the government because this is government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So, this democratic form of the government based on the popular consent or people consent, which ensures their participatory nature. However, there are chances that the role of the citizen could be limited to just voting in a democracy. The gap between the elected representatives and the people widens in complex democracy which have variety of the people divided by caste, class, religion, etc. In contrast to the ellistic and pluralistic theory, participatory democracy advocates active citizens' participation. It advocates people's participation, or citizens should participate actively in policy making to ensure common good is promoted. While it also makes the government more accountable towards the citizen. That's why it makes the government more accountable towards the citizen. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, J.S. Mill, and C.B. Macpherson supported the idea of participatory democracy. Rousseau argued for popular sovereignty. The concept of popular sovereignty was given by Rousseau as the supreme power is vested in the hands of the people, which is the supreme power is vested in the hands of the people, which is their inalienable rights, and the citizens should involve themselves in state affairs. The citizens should involve themselves in state affairs. Mill said that a government which promotes moral, intellectual, and active qualities in its citizens is the best government. Then next, deliberative democracy. Next type of the democracy is deliberative democracy. Next form of the democracy is a deliberative democracy. Deliberative democracy argues that political decisions should be based on fair and reasonable deliberation among citizens. This is required to produce best decisions to achieve public goods. In emphasizing on quality of process for best outcomes, John Rawls, Georgine Habermas have argued for a deliberative democracy. John Rawls believes that reason can overcome self-interest to attain a just political society. But Habermas believed that fair procedures and clear communication would lead to legitimate and mutually agreed upon decisions. Then next, people democracy. People's democracy refers to democratic models granted by a Marxist tradition. Marxists have been interested in social equality and hence have their own idea of democracy against the Western model, which they say only guarantees political equality. People's democracy is established after the proletarian revolutions, when proletariat start making political decisions. This will eventually give way to communism, marked self-regulations. While Karl Marx talked about the rule of the proletariat, Lenin changed the concept and introduced the role of the party as the vanguard of the proletariat. However, Lenin did not establish mechanisms to check the power of the party and its powerful leaders to ensure that they remained accountable to the proletariat. Next type, the social democracy. What is social democracy? Social democracy stands for a basic change in Marxist thought. Although it shares same goals with communism, it aims to establish a socialist society. The social democracy, the main aim of the social democracy is to establish a socialist society, but not through the revolution, but through state regulations of means of the production. Social Democrats do not believe in the Marxist critique of democracy. Marxist critique of democracy, which sees it as bourgeois headed for a class rule. Instead, social democrats see democracy as essential for achieving the socialist idea. That is why they stand for state regulation of business. They stand for state regulation of business and industry in order to ensure welfare of citizens. welfare of citizens. This movement started with the effort of August Bebel and Wilhelm Leibenkind, who confounded the Social Democratic Workers' Party in the year 1869 in Germany. The next type of the democracy is e-democracy. This is a relatively new concept, but it based on the works done by earliest theory. E-democracy or electronic democracy. E-democracy or electronic democracy is the use of information and technology to enhance or even replace representative democracy. Common problems in all democracies, issues of skills, lack of time, decline of the community values, and lack of opportunities for policy deliberation could be dealt with the digital communication. Supporters of the e-democracy have built on the ideas of participatory democracy to enhance active citizens' participation in policy making. Then, Indian democracy at a glance, page number 83. Indian democracy at a glance. We will discuss about Indian democracy. With more than 800 million eligible voters, India is often referred to as the latest democracy in the world, which was created after India got independence from the British rule in the year 1947. India did not want to adopt a constitution imposed by the British, and hence the Constituent Assembly was met with indirectly elected members to draft India's constitutions. It is remarkable though that an indirectly elected body, after adopted the concept of the universal adult franchise as the Constituent Assembly itself was not elected by the people. During the debates in the Constituent Assembly, Jawaharlal Nehru, Sardar Patel, B.R. Ambedkar, N.V. Gadgil supported the adoption of parliamentary democracy in India, keeping in mind India's familiarity with this system since from the British period. Others like R.N. Singh, Loknath Mishra, and Brajeshwara Prasad opposed parliamentary democracy, but R.N. Singh had said that it is difficult to find an army to honest minister, deputy ministers, and parliamentary secretaries, etc. He argued for a presidential form of the government, saying it would be easy to find an honest president. The assembly adopted the parliamentary form of the democracy, keeping in view India's past experiences with this system. Before getting independence, India was ruled by this form of the government, this parliamentary form of government. Some scholars believed that democracy was a Western concept and democratic institution was imposed upon people of India who lacked any experience in this regard. However, modern politics pertaining to the organizing people around the public issues and putting demands before the state started in India in mid-19th century. Associations and organizations like Pune Sarvajanik Sabha were established by the middle class and traditional elites, which led the foundation of the democracy form of the government in India. The idea of democracy gained ground in India through a gradual development of the legislative councils in provincial and the central levels during the British period. In post-independence era, periodic elections based on adult franchise have ensured that democratic institutions and practices are firmly rooted in India, in Indian politics. The social composition of political parties is changing, due to which the state legislature, the parliament, and the ministries are becoming more representative today. The main features of the democracy in India are as follows. The preamble of the Constitution of the India describes India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. India is a parliamentary democracy based on the concept of one person, one vote. Free and fair periodic elections to the state legislature and parliament are held based on adult franchise. Our election,
Ma'am?
yes,
Excuse
yes.
me, ma'am, your voice was not audible. So, after social democracy, which type of democracy you said?
After social democracy, there is e-democracy. E-democracy.
E-democracy.
Huh. E-democracy. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, please say two line about it. It was
Okay,
not
okay.
audible.
Okay,
ma'am.
okay.
Thank you.
This e-democracy is a totally new concept, but it is based on the works done by the earlier theorists. E-democracy or electronic democracy. Okay, it is electronic democracy is the use of information and technology to enhance or even replace representative democracy. That is use of information and technology. Okay. Then common problem in all democracy, issue of the scale, lack of the time, decline of the community values, and lack of opportunities for policy deliberation could be dealt with the digital communications. It is one type of digital communication. Supporters of e-democracy have built on the idea of participatory democracy to enhance active citizen participation in policy making. Is it clear? Okay, now Indian democracy at a glance. The features of Indian democracy. The preamble to the Constitution of the India describes India as a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. India is a parliamentary democracy based on the concept of one person, one vote. Free and fair, the second point, free and fair periodic election to state legislature and parliament are held based on adult franchise. There is free and fair elections for the legislature and for the parliament also, and through the process of the universal adult franchise. Universal adult franchise means every people after achieving the 18 years of age, they have the right to cast their vote irrespective of caste, color, sex, creed, and religion. Next feature, the rule of law. We are governed by rule of law. The rule of law is ensured as the written Constitution of India is supreme. The Constitution of the India is supreme, which is interpreted and granted by an independent judiciary. The Constitution of the India is supreme, not the parliament like Britain. And we have also independent and impartial judiciary. We have independent and impartial judiciary. There is separation of the power between the executive, legislature, and judiciary. We in India, the powers of the executive organ, legislative organ, and judicial organs are totally separated. Then, the Constitution of the India gives fundamental rights to its citizens. We have 6 fundamental rights. The right to equality from Article 14 to 18, right to freedom from Article 19 to 22, right against exploitation from Article 23 to 24, rights to freedom of religion from Article 25 to 28, educational and cultural rights from Article 29 to 30, and right to constitutional remedies from Article, only one article, it deals only one article, so that is Article 32. There is existence of multi-party system in India. There is, in India, we have multi-party system. There is existence of multi-party system in India We have national political parties and we have also regional political parties vying for space in politics, making it dynamic and vibrant. The leaders of the largest party in the opposition of each house is designed as the leader of the opposition. But the party, the opposition party should have at least 10% of seats of the total strength of the house as per the Constitution of India. Then last feature, the media. We have a free media, mass media. The media in India is free from state interference, which plays an important role in mobilizing public opinion with respect to policies implemented by government. A number of the achievements can be attributed to the functioning of the democracy in India. The foremost among them is that Indian democratic experience has proved the skeptics wrong who believe that democracy in India would not survive given India's diversity in form of the caste, religion, language, culture, and religion. India is a multi-diverse, multicultural, multilinguistic country. It have a federal form of the government with unitary spirit. Okay. Still, it is known as the largest democracy of the world, but increase in the literacy rate, reduced poverty, while the marginalized section are being brought into mainstream through democratic process. There has been a shift of the power from dominant caste and classes to the backward caste and classes, almost without any violent means through democratic means. At the international level, India is gradually moving away from an aid recipient country to being an aid provider as it gives economic aid to its neighbors in South Asia. However, there are some challenges that are still posing question to democracy in India. One is political violence. That political violence is one of the prime issue in India which needs to be handled properly. For example, Naxalism, insurgency in northeast India are often cited as a blot on Indian democracy. Hence, it is important to reiterate with what Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, chairman of the drafting committee for framing India's constitution, had said. He had argued for economic and social equality, saying only political equality would not be enough. Prolonged inequality in social and economic lives, prolonged inequality in social and economic life would prove dangerous for political democracy, as those who suffer could blow up the political structure. There is a need for further electoral reforms in India to tackle the issues like defection, fake voting, the role of the money and the muscles power during elections, corruption, and economic inequality is eroding the rule of law and impact working in democracy to the determinant of the weak. There is inadequacy of representation as a number of the people voting to elect their representative is not too high. Even the first past the post system, the person who gets majority of the vote come as the winner. This system in India is not representative in the nature. It can prove harmful for the interest of the marginalized sections of the society. In the overall analysis, it would not be fair to judge democracy in India is merely successful or a failure. The procedural democracy need to be strengthened and made more representative and accountable to that it results in substantive democracy. Now it is all about democracy. Then we will start our next chapter, gender. Gender. Introduction. The term gender, it is a recent origin. This is a new things in the political theory. It's a new issues in the political theory. Until the emergence of the feminist theory as a recognized academic perspective, contemporary political theory was largely assumed to be gender neutral in focus. The assumption has now been subject to extensive critique. Exploitations of gender in political theory have to date been undertaken primarily by those pursuing a feminist agenda. For it is feminists who have been most sensitive to the fallacy involved in conflicting men with individual and masculinity with neutrality. So while it is feminist political theory that has explicitly theorized gender in recent time, it is entirely possible to consider gender in political theory from perspective other than feminist. The role of the feminist is mostly in our political system. The role of the feminism is rare. There is, for instance, a growing body of the literature expounding man and masculinity, which might usefully inform consideration of gender in political theory, and which is distinct from extensive feminist literature that has developed. Nonetheless, given the overwhelmingly masculine nature of the politics up to the present time, it has been feminists who have had the strongest political motivation and intellectual ambition to explore gender in political theory. So what is gender? Gender shapes our political and social landscape and our personal interactions. Gender is a crucial lens for contemporary political theory, which not only helps understand the limits and assumptions of mainstream theories, but it also brings new debates to light. Gender is embodied so thoroughly. Gender is embodied so thoroughly in our institution, our actions, our beliefs, our desires, that it appears as us to be completely neutral. Politics as a real world phenomena and political science as an academic discipline are genders. The study of the politics has now broadened beyond the narrow focus on those holding formal office and politics of distributions. It now encompasses many new groups comprising gender troubles, as well as new ideas about masculinity and femininity across a range of the context, from house and home to the houses of the parliament. Then, what is the meaning of gender? The word gender is being used sociologically or a conceptual category, and it has been given a very specific meaning. In its new incarnations, gender refers to the socio-cultural definitions of man and woman. It is a socio-cultural definitions of man and woman. The way society distinguishes men and the woman and assign them social roles. It is used as an analytical tool to understand social realities with regard to women and men. The distinction between sex and gender was introduced to deal with the general tendency to attribute women's subordinations to their anatomy. Always the society is comprising of both men and the woman. But both men and the woman are integral part of the society. Still, from the very ancient time, the women are enjoying inferior position. In the political fields also, the role of the women are much more less. Now in the contemporary times, their role is increasing in the day-to-day life or in the political life, but in comparison to the men, the roles of the women and the participation of the women in the politics is very less. Very less number of the women's author are found, very less numbers of the women's politicians, women's chief minister, women's prime minister are found in our society. For ages, it was believed that the different characteristics, roles and status accorded to women and men in society are determined by biology. That are natural and therefore not changeable. Every culture has its ways of valuing girls and boys and assigning them different roles, responses and attributes. All the social and cultural packaging that is done by boys and girls from birth onwards is gendering. And Oakley, who was among the first few feminist scholars who used this concept, say gender is a matter of culture. It is a matter of culture. It refers to the social classification of the man and woman into masculine and feminine. That people are male or female can usually be judged by referring to biological evidence. So, gender is embedded in experience in all settings from government offices to street games. Okay, gender system are established in different socio-cultural contexts which determine what is expected, allowed and valued in a woman or man, a girl or boy in this specific context. Gender roles are learned through socialization process. They are not fixed but are changeable. Gender system are institutionalized through education system, political and economic system, legislation, and cultural and tradition. In utilizing a gender approach, the focus is not on individual women and men, but on the system which determines gender's role, responsibilities, access to and control over resources, and decision-making potentials. Okay. It is also important to emphasize that the concept of gender is not interchangeable with women. Gender refers to both women and men and the relations between them. Promotion of gender equality should concern and engage men as well as women. In recent years, there has been a much stronger direct focus on men in research on gender perspectives. There are three main approaches taken in the increased focus on men. Firstly, the need to identify men as allies for gender equality and involve them more actively in this work. Secondly, the recognition that gender equality is not possible unless men change their attitudes and behavior in many areas. For example, in relation to reproductive rights and health. And thirdly, that gender system in place in many contexts are negative for men as well as for women, creating unrealistic demand on men and requiring men to behave in narrowly defined ways. A considerable amount of interesting research is being undertaken by both women and men on male identities and masculinity. The increased focus on men will have significant impact on future strategies for working with gender perspective in development. Equality refers to equal opportunities in terms of access to sources of livelihood, health, and education, as well as to social, economics, and political participation without discrimination. So gender inequality stem from relations of the power and authority, class, caste, hierarchy, and socio-cultural tradition, customs, and norms. Okay, then we will study gender and politics. Page number 90. Gender and politics. In most modern democracy, equality between men and the women has become the dominant ideal. Equality, always there is a call that men and women are equal. Equality between men and the women has become the dominant ideal within the mainstream of the political discourse. Men and the women should naturally have the same right. Naturally, both should have same rights, and no one should be excluded from political life. Both have same roles and the power in the political activities, in the political affairs of the state. All are free to cast their vote. Both men and the women are free to contest in the election and take any type of the post also. Men and the women should naturally have the same rights, and no one should be excluded from political life. Nevertheless, there are substantial differences both between countries and between different political spheres as to how much and what kind of equality exists. There are several regions where some countries or some policy areas are more gender equal than others. And everything from regime and institutional features to elements of culture have been used to explain where politics is generally still dominated by male politicians. The politics is generally dominated by male politician. How many women prime minister or chief minister are found? Less number of the women's prime minister, women's president, women chief minister are found. So the political field is dominated by male politicians. The literature on gender in the politics is broad. Gender inequality in the political acts are diverse, as voting, campaigning, and leading, as well as gender differences in the political knowledge, socialization, attitudes, and women places in the political theory. There are diversity of the approaches with regard to range of the themes concerning gender and politics. First, women are seen in the categories and analysis of the political science, thereby gendering of the classic units of the analysis such as citizens, voters, legislatures, parties, states, and decisions, and nations also. Then second stand on women has examines political activities in areas of traditionally seen as outside political science. Then third stand has looked at gender as a structure of social organization. Gender as a structure of social organizations. Finally, struggles within the broader feminist movement, women of the color, women of marginalized races and ethnicities, women in the developing world, post-colonial feminists, and LGBTQ scholars who pressed for a place in the study of gender politics, sometimes finding a degree of the accommodations and sometimes frustrated with resistance. Okay, there is an odd paradoxical relations between politics and gender. On the one hand, issues of gender are clearly central to understanding of the political. Both the practices and study of the politics have long been notoriously masculine endeavor. So much so that many commentators have argued that politics has historically been the most explicitly masculine human activity of all. It has been more exclusively limited to the men and more self-consciously masculine than any other social practices. The institutional manifestation of the politics located in the government have been resistant to the incorporation of women, their interest or perspective. Women have by and large been excluded from traditional political activities and discouraged from defining their activities in the political activities. Women are always surrounded by the traditional activities, but they are discouraged to attend any type of the political activity. In this sense, issues of the gender have long been constructive of the definition and operation of politics. On the other hand, issues of the gender are largely assumed to be irrelevant to the political. If gender is understood as synonymous with women, then women absence from political sphere can be taken to imply that gender issues are simply non-relevant to politics. Then gender equality as a goal, gender mainstream as a strategy. Page number 91. Gender equality is preferred terminology with United Nations rather than gender equity. Gender equity denotes an element of interpretation of social justice, usually based on tradition, custom, religion, or culture, which is most often to the determinant of women. Such use of the equity in relation to the advancement of the women is unacceptable. During the Beijing conference in 1995, it was agreed that the term equity would be utilized. Gender equality means that the rights, responsibilities, and opportunities of the individuals will not depend on whether they are born male or female. Equality does not mean the same as. Promotion of gender equality does not mean that women and men will become the same. Equality between women and the men has both a quantitative and a qualitative aspect. The quantitative aspect refers to the desires to achieve equitable representation of women, increasing balance and parity, while the qualitative aspect refers to achieving equitable influence on establishing development priorities and outcomes of women and men. So there is a dual rationale for promoting gender equality. There is a dual rationale of promoting gender equality. Firstly, that equality between women and the men, equal rights, opportunities, and responsibilities is a matter of the human rights and social justice. Both should be treated equally. Both should be provided same rights and responsibilities. Secondly, that gender equality between women and the men is also a precondition and effective indicators for sustainable people-centered development. The perception, interest, needs, and priorities of both women and men must be taken into consideration, not only as a matter of social justice, but because they are necessary to enrich development process. Gender equality is a goal that has been accepted by governments and international organizations. It is enshrined in international agreements and commitments. However, there are global patterns to inequality in terms of violence against women. Women political participation and representation in decision-making structures lagging behind, having different and discriminatory economic opportunities, trafficking and sex trade. These issues need to be addressed in efforts to promote gender equality. Achieving gender equality between women and men will require changes at many levels, including including changes in attitudes and relationships, changes in institutions and legal framework, changes in economics institutions, and changes in social decision-making structure. Gender mainstreaming is an organizational strategy. Gender mainstreaming is an organizational strategy to bring a gender perspective to all aspects of an institution's policies and activities through building gender capacities and accountability. In the year 1950s, in the year 1970s, strategies of integrating women into development by establishing separate women's units or programs within the state and development institution had made slow progress by the mid 1980s. In light of this, the need was identified for broader institutional change. If pervasive male advantages was to be challenged, adding women-specific activities at the margins was no longer seen as sufficient. Most major development organizations and many governments have now embraced gender mainstreaming as a strategy for moving towards gender equality. It is a strategy of moving towards equality between men and the women. Gender mainstreaming is not an end in itself, but a means to an end. The calls for increased gender mainstreaming in the economics and social councils agreed conclusions in the year 1997 are not for increasing gender balance within the United Nations, but for increased attention to gender perspective and goal for gender equality in the work of the United Nations. Gender mainstreaming does not entail developing separate women's projects within the work programs or even women's component within the existing activities in the works programs. It requires that attention is given to the gender perspective as an integral part of all activities across the program. This involves making gender perspective what women and men do and the resources and decision-making process they have access to more central to all policy development, research, advocacy, development, implementation, and monitoring of the norms and standards and planning, implementation and monitoring of the projects. Then gender mainstreaming was established as an intergovernmental mandate in Beijing Declarations and Platform of Actions in 1995 and again in the Economics and Social Council agreed conclusion in 1997. The mandate for gender mainstreaming was considerably strengthened in the outcome of General Assembly special session to follow up Beijing conference in the year June 2000. Gender mainstreaming is not being imposed on governments by United Nations. Member states have been involved in the intergovernmental discussions on the gender mainstreaming since mid-1990s and have in conscious adopted mainstreaming is an important global strategy for promoting gender equality. The mainstreaming strategy does not mean that targeted activities to support women are no longer necessary. Such activities specifically target women's priorities and needs through, for example, legislation, policy development, research and project or programs on the ground. Women-specific projects continue to play an important role in promoting gender equality. Now, gender Issues and trends. Page number 93. Gender is an issue. Which are the issues and trends in the areas of the gender's inequalities? First, inequalities in political power. Women are underrepresented in the political processes throughout the world. Always the women are underrepresented in the political process throughout the world. It is important to look at and understand gender differences in power within formal decision-making structure such as governments, community councils, and policy-making institutions. Policy-making institutions. Given the underrepresentation of the women and low visibility of the women's perspective, the fact that women often have different priorities, needs, and interests than men is often not apparent. National, regional, and sub-regional priorities, or even the specific needs and priorities of a community are often defended without meaningful inputs from women. Then inequalities within household. Inequalities in negotiating and decision-making potential and access to the resources has been documented within household. This has promoted question about both research and the policy, which is based on the assumption that household function as units where each members benefit equally. The investigation of the differences and inequalities at the household level is relevant to an understanding of a range of the key issues, including ability of the women and men to respond to the economic incentives, the designs of the effective strategies for HIV/AIDS prevention, and appropriate and equitable social security policies. Then next, differences in legal status and entitlements. Despite national constitutions and international institutions or international instruments that proclaim equal rights for women and men, there are many instances in which equal rights to personal status, security, land, inheritance, and employment opportunities are denied to women by law and practice. Addressing the resulting constraint for women is important as an end in itself, but it is also essential for formulating effective national strategies for increasing economic productivity and growth, reducing poverty, and achieving sustainable resource management. Then, division of the labor within the economy. Division of labor within the economy. In most countries, women and the men are distributed differently across manufacturing sectors, between formal and informal sectors, within agriculture, and among occupations. Women are also more likely than men to be in low-paid jobs or non-standard work, or part-time, temporary, or home-based, and likely to have less access than men to provide access such as education, skill, property, and credit. These patterns means that economic trends and economic policies are likely to have different implications for men and women. For example, trade liberalization has had uneven impacts by sectors, with consequences for both gender equality and economic growth, and that have only recently become the subject of investigation. Inequalities in the domestic or unpaid sector. In most countries, it is women. In most countries, it is women who shoulder the responsibility and tasks related to the care of nurturing of the family or sharp family. These tasks add to the women's workload and are often an obstacle to engaging in political action or expanding economic activities. Recent research has sought to demonstrate the relationship between the reproductive work and productive sector of the economy, in particular, the dependence of all productive activities on the creations and maintenance of the healthy labor force through this work at the household level, and the way in which the reproductive sector can be affected by the consequences of economic policies related to the trade, investment, and public expenditure. There has been an important shift from focusing on how economic policies have affected welfare in a gender-specific manner to illustrating how gender biases negatively affects the outcome of the same economics policies. Then violence against women. Gender inequality is also manifested in gender-based violence, either by a woman's intimate partners, that is termed as domestic violence, by an enemy army as a weapon of the attempted, that is ethnic cleansing, or in sexual exploitation through, for example, trafficking of the women and girls. Then discriminatory attitude. Gender inequalities are not only economics but are also reflected in other ways that are difficult to measure and change. Ideas about appropriate behavior, independence, and aptitudes are often grounded in gender stereotype and vary for women and the men. Ideas and practices tend to reflect and reinforce each other, which contributes to the complexity of achieving change. The next issue, patriarchy, understanding gender inequality. Patriarchy. What is patriarchy? Patriarchy is a systematic societal structure. It is a systematic societal structures that institutionalize male physical, social, economic power over women. Some feminists use the concept patriarchy to explain the systematic subordination of the woman by both overreaching and localizing structure. This structure work to the benefit of the man by constructing women's life choices and chances. There are many differing interpretations of the patriarchy. However, the roots of the patriarchy are often located in women's reproductive role and sexual violence interwoven with the process of capitalist exploitations. The main sides of the patriarchal oppression have been identified as housework, paid work, the state, culture, sexuality, and violence. Behaviors that discriminate against women because of their gender are seen as patriarchal practices. For example, occupational segregations, exclusion, and unequal pay. The concept of the patriarchy has been drawn into gender and development theorizing in order to challenge not only unequal gender relations but also unequal capitalist relations, sometimes seen as underpinning patriarchy. Feminists who explain gender inequality in terms of the patriarchy often reject male-biased societal structure and practices and proposes greater female autonomy or even separation as a strategy. Okay. Different theories of origins of the patriarchy. Page number 95. The major theory on the origin of the patriarchy mixes biological and societal factors to explain how patriarchy came about to perpetuate gender differences. Okay. First, the traditional view. Traditionalists opine that patriarchy is biologically determined. Patriarchy is biologically determined. Man and the woman are born different and are consequently assigned different role and tasks. Since their biological functions are distinct or different, men and the women are naturally have different social roles and tasks. According to the traditionalist argument, since women produce children Their chief goal in life is to become mothers, and their chief tasks childbearing and child rearing. Explanation which consider men biologically superior and men providers of family have however been negated on the basics of the research on the hunting and gathering societies. In the hunting and gathering societies, in this society, tremendous complementarity instinct existed between men and women. In several tribal societies, we find the prevalence of egalitarian ideology, wherein women command respect and equal status. The traditional theory of the male supremacy has been challenged by many since there is no historical or scientific evidence of such explanation. The biological deterministic explanation cannot become the basis of male domination. It is now recognized that patriarchy is man-made and historical processes have created it. An important explanation of the origin of the patriarchy was given by Friedrich Engels in 1884 in his book Origins of the Family, Private Property and State. Engels stated that women's subordination began with private property when the world historical defeat of female sex took place. Both the division of the classes and subordination of the women developed historically. Okay. Then we will study radical feminist view. Radical feminist view. Now, radical feminist view. In view of the radical feminist, patriarchy preceded private property. The original and the basic contradiction they believe in between sexes and not between classes. Radical feminists consider all women to be a class and do not believe that patriarchy is natural. However, they contend that gender inequality can be explained in terms of biological or psychological differences between men and women. According to some radical feminists, there are two systems of the social classes. The economic classes system, which is based on relation of the production, and next, the sex class system, which is based on the relations of the reproduction. It is this system based on sex that is responsible for women subordination. The concept of the patriarchy refers to the second class of the system of classes to the rule of the woman by men, based upon men's ownership and controls of the woman's reproductive capacities. Consequently, women have become physically and psychologically dependent on men. These feminists also say that it is not women's biology itself, but the value men place on it and power they derive from their control over it and are oppressive. Then socialist view. The socialist feminist combine both Marxist and the radical feminist position. They feel that both the standpoints have something to contribute, but neither is sufficient by itself. Patriarchy for them is not universal or unchanging. They view struggle between women and men. The struggle between women and the men are changing historically with change in modes of the production. According to them, patriarchy is related to the economic system, to the relations of the production, but it is not causally related. Several other forces influence patriarchy, such as ideology, just that patriarchy is not a consequences only of the development of private property, so it will not disappear when private property is abolished. They look at both the relations of the production and the relations of the reproduction in their analysis. The Marxist scholars neglected the whole area of the reproduction, family and domestic labor. According to the prominent socialist feminist has been Hilde Hartman, Maria Miles, Garda Lerner. All these are prominent socialist feminists. Then next concept, gender, concepts and theories. Gender, concepts and theory. The concept of the gender came into common parlance during the early 1970s. It was used as an analytical category as to draw a line of demarcation between biological sex differences and the way of these are used to inform behaviors and competency, which are being assigned as either masculine or feminine. The purpose of effecting a sex or gender distinction was to argue that the actual physical or mental effects of the biological differences had been exaggerated to maintain a patriarchal system of the power and to create a consciousness among women that they are naturally better suited to domestic role. Anna Oakley's text Sex, Gender and Society in year 1972 lays the ground for further exploitation of construction of gender. She notes how Western cultures seems most prone to exaggerations of gender differences and argues that the social efficiency of our present gender roles centers around women's role as a housewife and mother. This was not the first time that such distinction has been made. Indeed, they are very much top of anthropology, medical sciences, and significantly from feminism. Then, feminist theory. Feminist theory aims to understand gender inequality and focuses on gender politics, power relation, and sexuality, while providing a critique of the social and political relation. Much of feminist theory focuses on the promotion of the women's rights and interests. Themes explored in the feminist theory include discrimination, stereotyping, objectification, especially sexual objection, oppression, and patriarchy. Feminism supports social equality of men and women and is against sexism and patriarchy. The term feminism can be used to describe a political, cultural, or economic movement aimed at establishing equal rights and legal protection for women. The term feminism and feminist did not gain widespread use until in 1970s. First feminism signs were seen in the year 1840s in America for protesting of suffering of the women and African roots American people. At the end of these protests, they won voting rights in the year 1920s, but there is still defectiveness in gender equality in society. Feminists are against many issues in society. However, there are main 5 subjects that they focus on. First, working for increasing equality in society. Second, making large area for choices of peoples in society. They suggest reintegration of humanity. Then next, destroying the gender stratification. Then next, finishing the sexual violence. Then next, encourage the sexual freedom. The history of the feminism can be divided into 3 waves. The first feminist wave was in 19th and early 20th century. The second wave was in 1960s and 70s, and the third extended from the 1990s to the present time. The first wave refers mainly to the women's suffrage movement of the 19th and early 20th century. The second wave refers to the ideas and action associated with the women's liberation movement beginning in the years 1960s in this year, which campaigned for legal and social rights for the women. The third wave refers to a continuation of and a reaction to the perceived failures of the second wave of feminism. beginning in the year 1990s. Feminism has altered predominant perspective in a wide range of the areas within Western society, ranging from culture to law. Feminist activities have campaigned for women's legal rights, and the right of contract, property right, voting right, for women's right to bodily integrity and autonomy, for abortion rights, and for the reproductive rights, for protection of the women and girls from domestic violence, sexual harassment and rape, for workplace rights, including maternity leave and equal pay against misogyny and against other forms of the gender-specific discrimination against women. Then liberal feminism. Liberal feminism. Liberal feminism asserts that equality of the men and the women through political and legal reform. It is an individualistic form of feminism which focuses on women's ability to show and maintain their equality through their own actions and choices. Okay. The liberal feminism uses the personal interactions between men and the women as the place from which to transform society. According to liberal feminists, all women are capable of asserting their ability to achieve equality. Therefore, it is possible for change to happen without altering the structure of society. Issues important to liberal feminists include reproductive and abortion rights, sexual harassment, voting, education, equal pay for equal work, affordable childcare, affordable health care, and bringing to light the frequency of sexual and domestic violence against women. That's all. Now, any doubts, question, clarification? Write down the probable question from democracy. Probable question from democracy. Probable question from democracy. What is democracy? What is democracy? Question mark. Describe various types of democracy. Describe various types of democracy. The next question.
Ma'am, repeat again.
Okay. What is democracy? What is democracy? Question mark. Describe various types of democracy. Describe about various types of democracy. Okay. The next question. Elaborate about basic or salient features of democracy. Elaborate about basic features or salient features or characteristic of democracy. Okay. The next question. Next question. Make a difference between procedural and substantive dimension of democracy. Make a difference between procedural and substantive dimension of democracy. Okay, the next question. Make a elaborate note on Indian democracy. Then question from gender. Make a difference between gender equality, EQUALITY, gender equality and gender equity, EQUITY. Make a difference between gender equality and gender equity, EQUITY. The next question. What is patriarchy? What is patriarchy? Question mark. How far it is responsible for gender inequality in society? How far it is responsible for gender inequality in society? Okay. The next question. Elaborate about theories of origins of patriarchy. Elaborate about different theories of origin of patriarchy. Okay. The next question. What is gender? Question mark. Critically analyze about feminist theory. Okay. Any doubts? Any problem? Hello? Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Any problem?
No, ma'am.
Then now our class is over. Okay. In our next class.
Thank you, ma'am.
In our next class. Yes.
मैम जेंडर 2 नंबर प्रश्न टी कहिबे
2 नंबर प्रश्न कोन करथलो एते बेला जाय पळैथिलो छाडी की सुनो ना नेक्स्ट 2 नंबर क्वेश्चन
व्हाट इज पैट्रियार्की हाउ फार
जणे कहो फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन लिसन फर्स्ट क्वेश्चन मेक a difference between gender equality and gender equity Okay, it is okay. Then next question. What is patriarchy? What is patriarchy? Question mark. What is patriarchy? How far it is responsible for? How far
It is
responsible for gender inequality in society? Gender inequality in society.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, बाकी question लिखिଛ सबू?
आज्ञा.
Okay, or any other problem from anybody? Any other problem from anybody? Then in our next class, we will study about citizenship, civil society and state. Okay? Okay? Now class is over.
Okay, ma'am.
Now class is over.